It's 7:30 p.m. across India. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Nick Harper. Good to see you, Nick.
Good morning, Tanvi. It's 10 a.m. here in a very wet Washington, D.C., 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. A new aid deal for Ukraine up for discussion in Europe. We'll get the latest. And the US warns Iran not to retaliate following a strike that killed a top commander in Syria. But first, the headlines.
Taiwan rocked by biggest earthquake in 25 years. 9 people killed, over 800 injured, with at least 50 missing. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with other world leaders, expressed their solicitude towards the island nation. US Foreign Secretary Antony Blinken and alliance partners discuss more military support for Ukraine in Brussels ahead of the bloc's 75th anniversary tomorrow. Finland signs 10-year security pact with Ukraine. Russia says NATO at 75 has returned to the Cold War mindset, sees jump in army recruitment after last month's deadly concert attack in Moscow. The top story of the day, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit Taiwan on Wednesday morning local time, killing at least 9 people and injuring over 800. The epicenter of the quake was in the waters off the eastern coastline of the island. The quake knocked out power in several parts of the island nation. The Chinese state media said that it was felt in Fuzhou, Xiamen, Guangzhou and Ningde in China's Fujian province. Locals in Taipei were rattled after the quake. Taiwan's Central Weather Administration said the aftershocks could be felt in Taipei. More than 25 aftershocks were registered in the region. The tremors caused landslides in the eastern mountainous region of Hualien. Taiwan's fire department said that one person is suspected to have been crushed to death by falling rocks in Hualien. The area was the epicenter of the quake. Rescuers raced against time to help people out of a collapsed building in Taiwan's Hualien. The quake was the strongest tremor to hit the island in at least 25 years. Meanwhile, search for the trapped residents is underway as emergency personnel walk through the dark corridors while going door to door and calling out to residents in Hualien. At least 26 buildings have collapsed, more than half in Hualien. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has asked government agencies to continue to pay close attention to the situation in various places and initiate various contingency efforts.
The National Army will also provide support. The central and local governments will cooperate with each other to minimize the impact of the disaster. At this time, when there are frequent aftershocks, the government must ensure the accuracy of information and provide timely assistance to people in need so that people can feel at ease and safe. We are ready to work together.
DD India's Patrick Falk sent us this report from Taipei.
Well, reports say that 75 people that were trapped inside tunnels in Hualien County have now successfully been rescued. There are still more than 100 others that are trapped, including 50 in 4 separate minibuses. These were hotel employees that, as we understand, were caught in these buses on the way to work when the quake struck. And of course, there are still others that may be trapped in collapsed buildings. You'll have seen a lot of the visuals visuals of the damage, mostly in Hualien County. Many buildings that have been ripped from their foundations and are leaning on a tilt, and the coming days are looking really quite uncertain for Taiwan. There have been more than 100 aftershocks that have taken place since that initial quake struck at 8 a.m. Local time, some of them measuring above magnitude 6 on the Richter scale, and authorities have said that further aftershocks are expected, and there could be ones almost as big as that initial quake. Authorities have said that the priority right now is really to save as many lives as possible. There is some concern about the spread of disinformation, and authorities have also been calling on people to verify reports so that they can ensure that necessary help gets to people that need it the most.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with other world leaders, expressed grief over the loss of lives by the deadly earthquake that struck Taiwan on Wednesday. PM Modi took to social media site X to extend solidarity for the damage caused to the people and offer support in the time of crisis. Other world leaders also expressed their deep concerns towards the island nation. Now, Russian security forces have detained 2 more citizens of Tajikistan during a counter-terrorist operation in Russia's Dagestan region, in response to the deadliest attack in 2 decades that took place at a concert hall in Moscow on March 22nd. Russia has already arrested 10 suspects from Tajikistan. After the terror act, there has been a drastic rise in the number of people joining the Russian armed forces. The Russian Defense Ministry said that since the past 10 days, more than 100,000 people have sought to join the military to take action against the attack that killed 144 people. Even though Islamic State terror group claimed responsibility for the attack, Russia has said that it suspects Ukraine's hand behind the deadly concert hall attack. On to Europe now. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, will celebrate its 75th anniversary on Thursday. And for this, the bloc's foreign ministers are meeting on Wednesday and Thursday to discuss military support for Ukraine in the days ahead. My colleague Nick Harper is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Nick, U.S. Foreign Secretary Antony Blinken in Brussels now?
That's right, Tanvi. After wrapping up his Paris trip, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken reached Brussels for the crucial NATO meeting. In Paris, Blinken said NATO was looking at measures that could serve as the necessary bridge to the alliance's membership for Ukraine. The top US diplomat met France's defence minister, as well as French President Emmanuel Macron, and held talks with his French counterpart, Stéphanie Séjourné, underscoring the ongoing collaboration with Europe in supporting Ukraine. A proposal for a $108 billion funding package for Ukraine is on the table as NATO foreign ministers meet in Brussels. The 2-day meeting aims to have an aid package finalised in time for the NATO summit, which will be held here in Washington, D.C. in July. The proposal by NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg would give the Western alliance a more direct role in coordinating the supply of arms and equipment to Ukraine.
Ministers will discuss how NATO could assume more responsibility for coordinating military equipment and training for Ukraine, anchoring this within a robust NATO framework. We will also discuss a multi-year financial commitment to sustain our support.
Ukraine. Well, as NATO commemorates its 75th anniversary this week, Russia has asserted that the alliance has now reverted to a Cold War mindset.
Today, in relations with Russia, the bloc has returned to Cold War settings. In its doctrinal documents, our country is proclaimed, direct quote, the most significant direct threat, end quote. There is an active build-up of the military potential on the eastern flank. Military drills, unprecedented in size, against Russia are conducted. They aren't even trying to cover it up.
Well, to get more on all of this, we're joined by DD India's Ishan Garg, who's live in Brussels for us. Ishan, let's start with this aid package. What more do we know about this more than $100 billion package for Ukraine?
Well, essentially, the idea for this package, according to NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, is to provide Ukraine with some long-term view over what kind of funding it's going to have access to. Jens Stoltenberg says that for Ukraine to be able to plan its offensives well, it needs to have that sort of visibility. And the other idea is, of course, to have NATO allies pool their money to contribute to a fund in a more structured way, and they shouldn't be contributing in an ad hoc manner. So the idea is that member countries should prioritize having a framework that they can use to give this money to Ukraine through a fund, and not rely on voluntary contributions throughout the year. So it kind of solves two purposes at the same time. The idea would be that different NATO countries will be able to chip into this fund based on their economies, the size of their economies, the same way the budget for NATO is decided. So it will be decided by the relative GDPs of different countries. We are not, of course, expecting it to be signed off on at this summit, but this will set the stage up for the leaders to discuss it and perhaps take it up later in July in Washington when NATO leaders meet there.
And Ishan, NATO has also been doing some future planning, looking at ways to protect US involvement in the alliance, even if Donald Trump is re-elected in November's US presidential election.
Well, the prospect of a Donald Trump presidency certainly looms large on this meeting, and one of the ways in which NATO is looking at quote-unquote future-proofing that sort of idea is by potentially having the Ramstein Group, the Ukraine Contact Group, which is a grouping of 40 different countries that coordinate military supplies to Ukraine. The idea would be that NATO takes over some of those responsibilities, if not all of that. Now, this is all being discussed here in Brussels. There is no clear indication of that, how that will go. But Jens Stoltenberg has said that US being a part of NATO alliance, US being in a position to sort of guide those conversations and those discussions that have happened at the Ramstein Group's meetings remains crucial. But what this will allow NATO to do is take up a lot of those responsibility in terms of coordination in case there is a reduction in US's role within the Ramstein Group or within NATO as well in the future.
Ishan, thank you. That was Ishan Garg joining us live from Brussels. Well, next today, Finland and Ukraine have signed a 10-year agreement on security cooperation and long-term support that covers Ukraine's defence and security for Ukrainian reconstruction. Finland's President Alexander Stubb met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev on Wednesday, where he confirmed that his country would send a package worth $203 million to Ukraine. Finland has become the 8th NATO member to sign a 10-year agreement on security cooperation with Ukraine, pledging to keep up long-term support as the conflict with Russia drags on. Well, Ukraine on Wednesday claimed to have shot down 4 Russian drones used in overnight attacks on its central regions. The drones were destroyed over 4 different regions. Meanwhile, a Russian missile attack in Dnipro damaged 4 educational facilities and 9 residential buildings, injuring 18 people. Russia has recently intensified its attacks on Ukraine, targeting grid infrastructure to deal significant damage to the country's power system. The United States has warned Iran not to retaliate over an airstrike on the Syrian consulate, saying that it had no prior warning of the strike. At the UN Security Council on Tuesday, the deputy US representative to the UN, Robert Wood, said that the United States will not hesitate to defend its personnel. He also repeated the US's prior warnings to Iran and its proxies not to take advantage of the situation.
Even as we continue to learn more about this incident, it seems clear that every member of this Council should reiterate that all states, including Iran and Syria, have a responsibility to avoid the path of escalation, to stop arming and advising terrorist groups, and to rein in the actions of proxies who threaten regional peace and security.
Meanwhile, tensions have escalated between Iran and Israel following this strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus on Monday. Iran claims that the attack killed 7 people, including 2 generals. Tehran has accused US ally Israel of carrying out the attacks and has vowed retaliation. Well, here in the US, state attorneys are all set to once again confront the Biden administration's lawyers in a federal appeals court over a controversial immigration law known as SB 4. This law, currently on hold, faces scrutiny over its constitutionality, particularly regarding the authority it grants to local judges to order migrants back to Mexico, regardless of their nationality. Several migrants on Tuesday were stopped by the US National Guard and sent back to a dry riverbed on the border. Despite the ongoing legal battle, some migrants still continue to try and cross into the United States. Former US President Donald Trump has posted a $175 million bond tied to his civil fraud case. It comes a week after an appeals court substantially reduced the amount that the former president needed to pay. DD India's William Denslow reports from New York.
In a series of social media posts, Donald Trump accused the legal system of being corrupt and politicised and railed against the fact he had to pay a bond before the appeals process is concluded. Donald Trump was ordered to pay roughly $450 million after a New York judge found that he'd inflated the value of his assets for favourable terms from lenders. But just last week, an appeals court lowered that figure to $175 million as Trump continues to fight the judge's ruling. In a statement, a lawyer for Trump said he made the payment as promised and looks forward to vindicating his rights on appeal. The bond was secured through Knight's Specialty Insurance Company. The chairman of the group that owns the insurance firm is said to be a Trump supporter. But speaking to US broadcaster ABC News, Don Hankey said it was more of a business decision than personal allegiance. The bond payment has dampened speculation that Trump may have bank assets frozen or assets seized to cover his legal penalties. But if his appeal is rejected, he'll be forced to pay the full figure to the tune of $464 million. The former president's due back in court later this month for the start of a criminal trial here in Manhattan. He's accused of paying hush money to a porn star ahead of the 2016 presidential election. He denies wrongdoing and says all his various legal battles are politically motivated. William Denslow in New York reporting for DD India.
Well, that wrapped things up here in Washington. Tanvi, throwing it back to you in the studio in New Delhi.
Thank you, Nick. Nick Harper joining us all from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Norway's parliament receives a bomb threat, leading to heightened security measures. And known for its stunning natural beauty, Germany's southern state of Bavaria now has another feather to its bow, although temporary, a deep purple lake.
The Himalayan state of Uttarakhand poised for the battle royale in the first phase. Will uniform civil court hold the key to the political heavyweights? Join us tonight on the Great Indian Election Battle for Uttarakhand at 8:30 p.m. IST only on DD India.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. We now get you the latest on the world's largest democratic elections in India. So as the date for the first phase of Lok Sabha polls in India nears, political parties are intensifying their poll pitches in different states. Home Minister and senior BJP leader Amit Shah addressed a public rally at Muzaffarnagar in India's northern state of Uttar Pradesh, while Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is once again trying his luck from the southern state of Kerala's Wayanad Lok Sabha seat.
With the polling for the first phase of Lok Sabha polls just days away, campaigning has gathered momentum with leaders of all political parties reaching out to the electorate with promises raising the poll fever. Kerala's Wayanad Lok Sabha seat these days is in the news. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is once again trying his luck. Paths for the India alliance in Kerala seem to go differently here, and this is the reason that CPI, an ally in India, has put up Ani Raja in Wayanad against Rahul. SDP, the political arm of PFI, has decided to support the UDF, and it is due to this reason Rahul faces the ire of the BJP. Amidst the political developments, Rahul Gandhi and Ani Raja filed their nominations on Wednesday. Prior to the nomination filing, Rahul Gandhi held a roadshow. Ani Raja is the wife of CPI General Secretary D. Raja. Moving to the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, Home Minister and senior BJP leader Amit Shah addressed a public rally at Muzaffarnagar, whereas Defence Minister and senior BJP leader Rajnath Singh held a public meeting at Ghaziabad in Uttar Pradesh. BJP candidate and Speaker of the Lok Sabha, India's lower chamber of parliament, Om Birla, filed his nomination. He is contesting from Kota Bundi in the northwestern state of Rajasthan. Congress Party President Mallikarjun Kharge launched the party's door-to-door initiative from Northeast Delhi parliamentary constituency. Meanwhile, in a big boost to the BJP, boxer Vijender Singh, India's first Olympic boxing medalist, quit the Congress Party and officially joined the BJP ahead of the forthcoming Lok Sabha elections. Bureau Report, DD India.
China's recent release of a new list of names for places in India's eastern state of Arunachal Pradesh met with firm rejection from New Delhi. With a history of similar provocations, China's actions continue to challenge regional stability. Despite this, India remains resolute in safeguarding its sovereignty. A report.
Since independence, northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh has been an undisputed integral part of India. China unlawfully claims the territory as part of southern Tibet and continues to indulge in hostility that destabilizes peace in the region. In a fresh move, Beijing released a fourth list of 30 new names of various places in the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. New Delhi has rejected these claims and maintains that inventing names will not affect the status of Indian sovereignty over the region.
You say, one, I think we rightly called it senseless. By doing it repeatedly, it is still senseless. So I want to be very clear. Arunachal Pradesh was, Arunachal Pradesh is, Arunachal Pradesh will always be Indian.
Even the United States recognizes Arunachal Pradesh as Indian territory and strongly opposes China's territorial transgressions.
The United States recognizes Arunachal Pradesh as Indian territory, and we strongly oppose any unilateral attempts to advance territorial claims by incursions or encroachments, military or civilian, across the line of actual control.
But China's unjustified claims over Arunachal Pradesh are not new. Dalai Lama's visit in 2017 prompted China to release 6 names of places in the Indian territory. In 2021, China objected to a visit by former Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu and reportedly renamed 15 places in the region. Prior to the G20 summit in Delhi, China heightened tensions by releasing a new map asserting territorial claims over Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin in Ladakh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Arunachal Pradesh last month irked China. And this is where Prime Minister inaugurated the world's longest bi-lane tunnel built at an altitude of 13,000 feet, which will not only provide all-weather connectivity to the Tawang region of Arunachal Pradesh, but also ensure better movement of troops and arms to forward locations along the line of actual control. As China continues to deploy strategies to foment trouble in the border areas, India remains undeterred and will continue to pump billions of dollars into connectivity projects protecting India's territorial sovereignty. With inputs from Meghna Dev, Jessica Taneja for DD India.
And next we take a look at what else is happening around the world. Norway's parliament was subjected to a bomb threat on Wednesday, leading to heightened security measures, with nearby streets being cordoned off by the police. While the public audience inside the building was evacuated, parliament members proceeded with their regular activities, including a session of ministers' question time. Researchers are wiring up coffee plants with solar-powered sensors in Tanzania in a bid to understand how climate change affects health of Arabica coffee plants in the region. Using Internet of Things technology, these wired plants will provide researchers with continuous updates on their health and hydration. In Arctic Norway, some 30 indigenous Sami herders have gathered 1,500 reindeer in a corral, sorting who owns which animal after the herds mixed while grazing up on the Finnmark plateau. And the Quarry Lake in Germany has changed to deep purple deep purple due to the presence of bacteria, resulting in a number of visitors gathering around to enjoy the view. That's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.